Good afternoon. Welcome to episode 32 of the Hockey Variety Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Coming to you from smoky central British Columbia. It is very smoky here, and we're not even like that close to the forest fires, and it smells like barbecue smoky outside as the train goes by. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. Holy cow, last episode, highest viewed episode so far. I think we're sitting at like 46 views. We might get to 50. So, hey, if you enjoyed today's podcast, be sure to subscribe on YouTube. We're trying to get to 100 subscribers. No. We're trying to get to 10 subscribers before the end of the year. Though if we got to 100, not complaining. No, I haven't been posting quite as frequently as I'd like, but way she goes. It's been busy. It's been a really busy time in my personal life. Yeah, so I don't know. It's been good, but yeah, there's lots going on right now, so I don't have tons of time to record. So I'll record when I can, but obviously I got to do a preview before the third round here. The second round of the playoffs wrapped up last night with the Dallas Stars defeating the Seattle Kraken 2-1. I watched pretty much that whole game. And that was a really good hockey game. Kudos to the Stars. Of course, I was rooting for the Kraken, but hey, I gotta give them some credit. It was a very tight game. Rope Hintz with a very nice goal to start things off, and then Wyatt Johnson scoring a highlight reel goal. The youngest player of all time to score the game-winning goal in Game 7, I believe. So that's pretty neat. Good for him, though. That was a nice goal. It was a good game. Seattle kept it interesting with about 17 seconds left, making it 2-1. But, Dallas locked it down, and it was over after that. So, don't know how long this episode will go today. I got a few things I want to talk about. I actually have a ton of things I want to talk about, but, I don't have too much time. I've been really crunched for time lately. So, I got a few points and go through, and then, a lot of the other things I've got kind of backlogged that I want to talk about. Those are also things I can talk about over the summer, too, when I do some episodes over the summer. It's a lot more historical stuff, but we're all about the current events here. So, at least these days. But I am looking forward to getting into some more of the historical side of things in the off-season. But I'm not going to talk about every single team that got eliminated. The Toronto Maple Leafs have been eliminated since the last episode. So has the Seattle Kraken. So have whoever Carolina eliminated. I don't know why that's not coming to mind off the top of my head. New Jersey. That was the team. New Jersey. I think it's because Carolina seemed like they handled them pretty dominantly. And we'll get into Carolina later. But of the teams that got eliminated that I want to talk about is the Edmonton Oilers. And, I've noticed a trend here in these playoffs. And I'm surprised the Oilers didn't really catch on. And that's about deployment of goaltenders. I was certain that the Oilers were going to start Campbell in Game 6. I was certain of it. I was like, how do you not start Jack Campbell? You're paying him $5 million a year for the next 20 billion years. And Stuart Skinner he's been having a tough time, clearly. And every single appearance that Campbell has made recently, he's looked good. And no, they kept going back to Skinner. Skinner's the guy that got him there. And go figure, in Game 6, the big elimination game, he couldn't get the job done, really. And it's not like, I looked at the goals he let in. No, I wouldn't say any of them were atrocious, but it makes you wonder if there was a different guy in net, maybe things would have transpired a bit differently. So I've got some stats up on the screen there, and just some things that I've been thinking about lately. And before I get into Campbell's playoff stats, Skinner's playoff stats, I want to talk about Jack Campbell since April 1st. Okay, so the reason why I'm going back to that day is because before April 1st, Jack Campbell was awful. Really, you look at his stats from prior to April 1st, like, he didn't have a quality start from, like, mid-February, may have been early February until April 1st. And what I mean by quality start, because you're going to hear me say that a lot, A quality start is when a goalie has a save percentage that is either 900 or bigger than 900. So if the save percentage starts with a 9, that'd be considered a quality start. And Jack Campbell did not have many quality starts before that. But in his 2 games before the playoffs, granted, they were both against Anaheim, one of the worst offensive teams, but he played really well. He had a shutout on April 1st, and then he stopped 27 of 28 on April the 5th. So in 2 games against Anaheim, he looked really good. Probably helped his confidence quite a bit going into the playoffs. And then after that, he didn't make a start in the playoffs at all, but he was great in relief. Most notably, I think it was game 4 against LA. Stuart Skinner, he was having a tough time, and Jack Campbell came in, held the fort down. He stopped 27 of 28 in that game, and the Oilers went on to win. He was very steady, and he got that win for the Oilers. He was fantastic. And then in this 3rd round against Vegas, he came in for relief here and there, and he looked pretty good when he did. But, going into game 6, Skinner was having a tough time, and they should have given Campbell that opportunity. And when you look at deployment of goaltenders, that's been a theme. Think back to game 2, Minnesota and Dallas. Philip Gustafson had a fantastic game in game 1 for the Minnesota Wild. And in game 2, they started Fleury, and he was awful. They didn't ride the hot goalie, and that's been a thing all season for Minnesota. Gustafson has deserved more starts the whole season, but they just decided to mix it up. So that was poor deployment of goaltending. And as a good example, and this should be so basic, Florida, it was after games 2 or 3, I can't remember which one, but they decided, you know what, Alex Lyon, you're not working out so well. Let's put our $10 million Sergei Bobrovsky goalie in. And the rest is history. After the Panthers put in Bobrovsky, they went on to beat Boston, which, they were obviously the best regular season team of all time on paper. And then they went on to beat the Leafs. Granted, that wasn't necessarily an easy series. Those were all really close games. And Toronto's a very good team. This is probably the best Toronto team they've had in this Matthews era. I'm not going to talk about the whole Toronto losing in the 2nd round in this podcast, not too much. But Kyle Dubas set this team up very well, and Florida still beat them. Really, that was a good Toronto team, and Florida found a way. And I think having Sergei Bobrovsky in net, I think that made a big difference. And on the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about save percentage. But going back to quality starts, okay, so save percentages that are 900 or greater, you got to think quality starts are going to play a big part in your team being successful in the playoffs. And let's just look at how many quality starts Stuart Skinner had in the playoffs. Game 2 against LA, Game 3 against LA, Game 6 against LA, so that's 3. And then against Vegas, not a whole lot. 1 in game 2, and then another one in game 4. So he had 5 quality starts, and I think that's in 12 games. 5 quality starts in 10 games, or 12 games, sorry. 5 quality starts in 12 games. That's not going to get the job done. And I don't get how, after that 11th game, so game 5 against Vegas, I don't know how you don't go to Skinner. I know Skinner's sample size since April 1st there. I know it's such a small sample size, but you've got to mix it up. I know Campbell had a tough year, but you're giving this guy money for a reason. He's a proven goaltender who had a down season. And I think the fact that they don't put Campbell in for game 6 I think that was a mistake, and that might have cost them the series. That might be really exaggerating a bit there, but I'll say this. That might have been the thing that prevented them from even getting to a game 7. Because I know the Oilers had to win 2, but, come on. Yeah, I don't know. I think the Oilers made a big mistake not starting Campbell for game 6. But hey, it's over now. And now what? Right? I mean, is goaltending an issue for the Oilers? I mean, they got Skinner locked up now. Not that I'm doubting Skinner at all for next season, but you're committing to these two goalies now, and they were arguably the biggest part in them not getting out of the second round this year. So, yeah, there you go. Oh, and I was going to make a segment about this. I'm not going to, though, now, because it's not really worth talking about. But I guess I will talk a bit about the Leafs. Yeah, in Game 5, yeah, that goal, quote unquote, that got waved off, the one where the Leafs apparently scored, the goal crossed the goal line, the puck crossed the goal line, rather, but the whistle already went, but you just see, like, the still image on the internet, and everyone's like, whoa, oh, they scored a goal, but it's like, no, you don't have audio, you can't tell that, the whistle would have already gone. That was no goal. Okay? And because, like, Bobrovsky kind of kicked it in after the whistle. Like, who cares? And also, like, people are comparing this to Calgary in the Stanley Cup Finals in 2004, Game 6. This is not even, like, close to that, okay? Like, the Leafs are down 3-1 in the series at this point. And also, like, the whistle blew. Like, there's no argument there. With the Calgary one, there's an argument there. And part of that's, like, the technology at the time and the criteria they used to determine if a goal was good or not. But this is the simple rule that the whistle went already. When the whistle goes, the play is dead. That goal doesn't count. And even if it should have, it probably wouldn't have mattered. Whereas in the Calgary 2004 situation against Tampa, there's a pretty big argument that goal could have mattered. That was a huge game. Calgary was up 3-2 in the series at that point. Yeah, that could have been the big difference maker, but it's not the case in the Leafs one, and the argument's even thinner. So anyways, moving on. Yeah, still on the topic of goalies and save percentages, like, goalies having a really good playoffs. It's been a theme, I think, in this one. I'll get to Jake Ottinger, but here I have the top 12 goalies in the playoffs based on save percentage. That's why you see Jack Campbell up there too. And I've circled all the projected starting goalies going into round 3. So you have Adin Hill, Frederik Andersen. Granted, Antti Raanta hasn't been bad either when he's had to play. Sergei Bobrovsky and Jake Ottinger. And when you look at those 4 goalies, like, going in the playoffs, everyone would have thought that Jake Ottinger would have the better numbers by the end of round 2, where in fact he's actually only sitting at a 9.03. Granted, he's been clutch. He has won, I think it was 5. I think he's 5-0 following a loss in these playoffs, which is excellent, really. We've seen with Andrei Vasilevsky in the past few years that being able to bounce back after a loss is huge. It's huge in the playoffs, and Jake Ottinger has shown that, hey, he can get the job done following a loss and not let that snowball effect happen at all. And hey, he was the MVP, I thought, last game, Game 7 against Seattle. He was great. He didn't have too many, like, crazy saves he had to make, but he was very steady, and his rebound control was great. He was putting those rebounds in good spots away from the Kraken. Like, he was very, very good. He kind of reminded me of, like, Carey Price in that sense of having good awareness of knowing where to put rebounds. Very Andrei Vasilevsky-like, too. Vasilevsky's really good at that, too. So, yeah, great game from Jake Ottinger, and it makes you wonder, can he carry this momentum into round 3? So, he'll be up against Adin Hill on Friday night for Game 1. And, man, the Vegas Golden Knights, their goaltending situation has been quite the story. Like, okay, like, Robin Lehner is supposed to be their starter. He's injured all season. Logan Thompson, rookie goalie, looked great all season up till the end when he was hurt. So, you think that's your 1-2. It's like, uh-oh, we're down to our number 3. Laurent Brossoit, he looked pretty good for the start of the playoffs, I thought. And then, before he got hurt, not looking too great, and his save percentage came down. Obviously, he's not in the top 12 you see on the screen there. So he's hurt. And then you're left with Jonathan Quick and Adin Hill. Now, when you're just comparing those two and you're in round 2 of the playoffs, you got to think that, oh, yeah, we're going with Jonathan Quick. Conn Smythe winner in 2012, 2014 Stanley Cup winner as well. So, you got to go with quick. But, yeah, they decided to go with Adin Hill, and it's been a good decision. He's 3-1. He's got a 934, and he's looked great up against that dynamic Edmonton offense in those last 3 games. And Adin Hill has gotten the job done. What a great decision. I think Sean Burke is their goaltending coach, and he must be doing a good job, because Adin Hill is what? Like, your number 5, your number 4, your number 5 goaltender, and he's been fantastic. Like, the goaltending depth on Vegas right now at this moment is insane. Like, Leonard's out, Thompson's out, Brossoit, who wasn't really on many people's radar up till recently, he's out. You've got Jonathan Quick, who's had a down season. He looked better when he came to Vegas. But you put in Adin Hill, who's kind of your number 5, number 4, number 5. He's been fantastic. Like, that's such a good problem to have. Like, you're looking at the offseason right now for New Jersey, right? And they've got a bit of a goalie dilemma, because they've got Blackwood that needs an extension. You've got Schmid. You've got Vanacek locked up for a while. And then you got Nico Dawes. So you've got 4 pretty good goalies. I don't know much about Dawes, but I've heard he's projected to be a very good goalie in the NHL someday. But that's a great problem to have, is having 4 good goalies, or in Vegas's case, 4 good goalies, and we'll see about Jonathan Quick, right? I mean, we know he's a proven playoff goaltender, but, what have you done recently, right? And Adin Hill's got to be the guy going into round 3. So, excellent problem to have. I bet the Oilers would love to have that problem right now. I don't even know who their number 3 is. I mean, they got Smith on the back burner. He's going to retire, though. You've got to think. Call it Mikko Koskinen. I don't know. I don't know what the Oilers are going to do next year. I really don't. Frederik Andersen, another team, Carolina, who's gone through a few goalies in these playoffs as well. I can't remember the exact timeline. They started with Ranta. Ranta got sick, I think. And I think Kochetkov came in for maybe a game or part of a game. And then Andersen came back from injury, and he's been fantastic. And Andersen, like, when all 3 of those Carolina goalies are healthy, you got to think Andersen's your number 1, Ranta's your number 2, and Kochetkov's your number 3. And we'll see how all that will look next season. But right now, Frederik Andersen, 5-0, 931. He has been, he's been one of the hottest goalies in the league recently. I think if it weren't for Adin Hill, this would be no contest, right? Frederik Andersen is definitely the hottest goalie going in. But, I think Carolina, like, their goalie depth, their whole depth, their entire team is fantastic. I'm going to talk about that later, but, like, they have looked like the best team in the playoffs so far, in my opinion. They don't have Svechnikov. They don't have Teravainen yet. Teravainen's supposed to return from injury. He's in a regular jersey for practice. That was yesterday or 2 days ago, I believe. And so it looks like Teravainen should be back for either game 1, maybe game 2. They haven't had Max Pacioretty all season, and they've been fine. Like, this team is so good. And you're getting guys producing, like Jordan Martinook having a fantastic second round. This team is so good, and Frederik Andersen has been a big part of that. And I've already talked about Sergei Bobrovsky, the last goalie going into this second round, and he's been really good. I mean, what can I say? He's been, arguably the biggest part of the Leafs not being able to get past the Panthers, especially early on in that season. Bobrovsky was fantastic. And I think it's a confidence thing, too. I feel like the guys in front of him are a bit more comfortable having Bobrovsky in net as opposed to Lyon, or maybe even Knight. I don't know what Knight's situation right now. I don't even know if he's back in the roster yet. But Bobrovsky's your guy. He's your $10 million goalie, and he's been playing like it recently. And, I've watched a lot of Columbus games over the years, and especially in the playoffs. Bobrovsky can get the job done when it matters. Really. He is a clutch goalie. It's just the regular season, his numbers are kind of misleading. So, yeah. All 4 starting goalies going into the second round. Definitely going to be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how Ottinger does against Vegas. Will he be able to bring up that 903? We'll have to wait and see. So this year in the playoffs, I've seen a lot less talk about possible Conn Smythe candidates, and I'm only saying that because it feels like analysts and whatnot, they'll blow it out of proportion way too early into the playoffs, and then and then a lot of those takes end up aging pretty bad. So hey, I thought I would just throw this out here. I think with a few of these teams, it's really early to determine who would be like the who's the obvious Conn Smythe pick at this point. With teams like Edmonton, like going into that round, it was Draisaitl, obviously, and if they got out of the second round, it probably would have been Draisaitl if they won the cup. Some teams might be more obvious than others, but there's some players I want to talk about, and it's a little bit tough to determine with some teams. So let's start in the West. So Conn Smythe, Vegas is one of those teams. I think it's too early to really get an idea of who their possible Conn Smythe pick would be. I'm not saying it could be Adin Hill if they went all the way, but you never know, right? So Jack Eichel, he's over a point per game here. He's 6 goals, 8 assists, 14 points, and I also wanted to include that he's a +7, so he has not been a liability defensively at all. He's really come into his game, his first time in the playoffs in his career, and you can tell there's been all of this, this built up, this eagerness to play in the playoffs, and he's come through finally. He's drafted in 2015, and he's finally making his playoff debut, and he's all about it. He's a gamer, and he's looked fantastic. And Chandler Stevenson, he's looked great too. Like I said, Adin Hill, they've been getting great goaltending in Vegas from guys you wouldn't really expect. And hey, maybe someone like Shea Theodore or Mark Stone, maybe someone kind of comes out of blue. Maybe one of the original Misfits. Marchessault's really turned it on recently. Riley Smith. You never know with Karlsson too. Karlsson could be fantastic here. So William Karlsson, that is. So yeah, I went with Jack Eichel, but hey, I think there's a lot of guys you can make an argument for. But it seems a little early to jump to that conclusion. Whereas with Dallas, I think it's pretty obvious who their MVP has been up till this point, and that's Roope Hintz. 9 goals, 10 assists, 19 points. He had a big goal in Game 7 against Seattle last night, and he's been great. And I want to make a shout out to Joe Pavelski. He's got 8 goals in 8 games. I think he'd be right up there too if it weren't for the injury. This narrative could change if Dallas goes on to win the Stanley Cup. Who knows, right? But right now, Roope Hintz, he's the guy. He's 1 point away from leading the NHL in points. I think he's behind Draisaitl right now. So you got to think Roope Hintz is going to get at least 2 points this series, right? So he'll have the lead in points soon enough, I'm sure. Hopefully I didn't just jinx it, but Roope Hintz, he's been fantastic. And it's funny, I mentioned this on the Instagram account too, Hockey Variety Podcast on Instagram, if you're not following me there. Last night on the ESPN broadcast, they were talking about Jason Robertson and how, he hasn't been producing, he's cold, blah, blah, blah. Like, he hasn't had a goal in 8 games, I think. But he's a point per game in the playoffs. Going into last night, he had 12 points in 12 games. And they're talking about Jason Robertson like he's not doing anything offensively, and it's no, he's been good, right? It's the same thing with Matthew Tkachuk last round too. He didn't have any goals, but he had 5 or 6 assists, I think. Robertson doesn't need to be the guy putting the puck in the back of the net when you have guys like Pavelski just sniping like crazy, ridiculous shooting percentage and all that. And that can apply to multiple guys on that Dallas roster too. So calm down about the Jason Robertson stuff. He's going to be fine. Especially when his line mate, Roope Hintz, is absolutely tearing it up. Carolina. So right now, and I'll get into my round 3 predictions eventually, but I'm feeling really good about the Carolina Hurricanes. And the reason why is they are such a complete team right now. Everyone's contributing. Everyone's been solid. They've been just so steady offensively, defensively. You got guys like Jordan Staal who've just been so good. And it made it really tough to make a Conn Smythe candidate, really. It's been tough. I think Aho is leading them in points, but I don't even have him as my pick. So right now I've got Frederik Andersen. Like I said, 5-0, 931. If he keeps those numbers up all the way until the Stanley Cup Finals and on to his Stanley Cup, I think he's your pick right now. Brent Burns has looked great too. Now he's only got 8 points in those however many games they played. Is it 10 games? Might be 11 games. But keep in mind, that's coming from the blue line, and he's looked dominant. When Brent Burns is out there on the ice, he looks like the guy running the show. It's actually, he reminds me of like prime Brent Burns in San Jose. Like when the year he won the Norris Trophy, he's looking just like that Brent Burns again. Whereas he's looking like he's controlling the ice, and I'm wondering if they can continue that going into round 3 against Florida. So, hey, let me know in the comments, who is your pick from the Carolina Hurricanes? Because I had a tough time with this one. Only because they have so many guys producing. I already mentioned Jordan Martinook. He's looking good. Jordan Staal. And then they're going to have Tara Vinen back, too. How's that going to change things? Like, Carolina looks like such a good team right now. I can't believe I doubted them in the first round. More on that in a sec. But, yeah, hey, let me know who your pick is from really any of these teams. Really, who's your Conn Smythe pick? And then finally from Florida, this was a pretty easy one. I went with Matthew Tkachuk, no question. 5 goals, 11 assists, and 16 points total in 12 games. So not bad. I just kind of did the math quickly in my head. 7 games against Boston plus 5 games against Toronto. 12 games, there you go. I'm assuming Tkachuk hasn't missed a game yet either. So yeah, 16 points, 12 games. And yeah, he's been great, really. I mean, even when he's not putting the puck in the back of the net, it's similar to Burns. It looks like he is the alpha out there running the show in both ends of the ice. So, yeah, I went with Matthew Tkachuk, but I gotta make a shout out to Carter Verhaeghe because, if Florida goes on a big run to the Stanley Cup Finals here and onto a Stanley Cup, Carter Verhaeghe might put his name into the Conn Smythe conversation there because he's got 5 goals, 7 assists, 12 points. So 12 points in 12 games. Pretty good, point per game. He probably has another level he could reach here. But hear me out. He's got 3 game-winning goals. So 3 out of their 8 wins, Carter Verhaeghe has had the game-winning goal. Most famously, the Game 7 overtime winner against Boston. So, yeah, I want to make a shout-out to Carter Verhaeghe as well. I think if Tkachuk's production slows down, but Verhaeghe's picks up, maybe he gets in the Conn Smythe conversation, but I don't think either guy cares because I think they just want to win games. And that's all it really comes down to. But hey, I like having this little Conn Smythe conversation, really. I know the players probably don't care as much about this kind of stuff compared to the grand scheme of things, the Stanley Cup, but I figured there's not a lot of podcasts talking about this, so I thought I would just kind of give my take on it. But like I said, let me know in the comments, is there any player who you think has been really good these playoffs and might have their name in for the Conn Smythe Trophy when it's all said and done? Let me know. Now, before we get into my round 3 picks for round 3, I don't know where I was going with that, but before I get into my round 3 picks, I want to just reflect on how absolutely butchered my bracket is. Now, every year, my bracket usually ends up not going as expected. I think most people can say that. I think there's been very few years. And I've done a bracket, I'm going to say at least the last 10 years. There might have been 1 or 2 years where, hey, my bracket turned out pretty good. And, man, I'm getting like 2019 vibes here. My bracket is toast. I have it up there on the screen right now. My original bracket, and oh boy. And I knew going into the playoffs there was going to be upsets. I had a feeling. I was like, there's a lot of good teams in the playoffs this year. There's got to be upsets. But here's the thing. Like, I didn't have the balls to pick Florida over Boston. I didn't, right? I think a lot of people didn't, right? Like, I even said so myself. Like, don't count out Florida. I think Florida will take it to 7. And they did, and then won. But, like, when you're making the bracket, it's so tough to predict which ones are going to be upsets. In fact, the one that I thought would be an upset, I Islanders over Carolina. I was so wrong, and now, right now on May 16th, I'm like, well, Carolina might be the best team in the league right now. I don't know. Like, it's tough to pick those upsets, and nobody has the guts to make them, myself included. So yeah, let's just I don't want to spend too much time on this, but let's just take a look. So first round, Colorado, nope. Seattle beat them. First round, Dallas, yeah, Dallas beat Minnesota. Vegas beat Winnipeg, and Edmonton beat LA. So in the West, I was like 3 for 4 in the first round. Not too bad, right? And then in the second round, or in the East, rather, I picked Boston over Florida. Nope. I picked Toronto over Tampa. Yeah, okay, that was a pretty good pick. I had the number of games correct, too. But the Islanders over Carolina, nope. And the Rangers over the Devils, big nope. Okay, so in the East, I was 1 for 3. So I was 4 for 8. Oh, sorry, 1 for 4. And then 4 for 8 in the first round. So 50-50, okay. But the second round, just no. Okay, so I didn't pick Dallas over Colorado, hypothetically. So that was wrong. And yeah, I predicted the Edmonton-Vegas matchup, but I picked the wrong team. I picked Edmonton. So they were out. They were actually my Stanley Cup pick. And then in the East, Toronto, I mean, they didn't get past Boston because that never happened, but they didn't get past Florida either. So I was wrong about the Leafs. And because I did predict the Leafs going into round 2 once we actually knew the round 2. And then I'm not going to look at my Metro picks from back then because both were wrong. So the Rangers didn't even come close to sniffing the Stanley Cup Finals, like I thought they would. Edmonton totally just choked in the second round there. Yeah, so that's my bracket. But let's take a look at the actual bracket. Okay, so wow, we've come a long way. Round 3 already. 4 teams left. In the West, we've got Dallas versus Vegas. And then the East, we have Carolina Hurricanes, first in the Metro, against the second wild card Florida Panthers. And, if you look back in history, you look at the team that won the President's Trophy. They usually don't win that same year. But a lot of the times, the team that won the President's Trophy will go on to win the Stanley Cup a year or 2 later. That's kind of a weird pattern that you see sometimes. And here we are. The Florida Panthers won the President's Trophy last season, and now they're in the Eastern Conference Finals, looking like they might be set for a Stanley Cup, except they have to get past the Carolina Hurricanes, who have been fantastic. Like I said, I've watched a lot of Canes games. I've watched a lot of Panthers games. And man, both these teams look so good. But the Carolina Hurricanes, they look so complete. Whereas the Florida Panthers, it feels like a bit of a Cinderella run. So is the Cinderella magic going to work off? I don't know. This is a tough one, right? And then when we look over in the West, we have Dallas and Vegas. 2 teams who had pretty hard-fought second round. Granted, I think Dallas had a bit more to overcome there with Seattle. Seattle's such a hard-working team. 4 really complete lines on Seattle, and Dallas found a way. I thought Dallas's top line looked really good in that Game 7. Just in terms of generating offense. Like, they didn't score a whole lot, just that goal from Hintz, but, if you have the lead, as long as the puck's in the other team's zone, sometimes that's, just as important as scoring another goal, because, you're killing clock. I know it's not a good thing to say that, but that's kind of what it came down to last night. Dallas did a pretty good job at holding the lead, limiting Seattle's chances, and they got the job done. So, yeah, and then you have Dallas, who's had a little bit of shaky goaltending, and then you have Vegas, who has some unexpectedly really good goaltending, right? So, I don't know. Let's get into my picks, though. So, here we go. Tough call. Okay, honestly, I think you could see any combination of events happening or whatever. I could see Florida advancing, I could see Dallas advancing, whatever. But my pick for the East, I've got Carolina in 7 games. I'm not going to doubt the Canes anymore. I didn't doubt them last round. I did pick them. They were my only correct round 2 prediction, I'll have you know. because I picked the Canes, but I also picked the Leafs and the Kraken and the Oilers, and I was wrong about 3 of those. But I'm taking the Canes. Okay, I know I've doubted the Panthers 2 rounds in a row, but the Carolina Hurricanes look so complete right now, and they're getting Teravainen back. Like, you could put Teravainen on like the 4th line, and they'll be good, right? I don't think that's gonna happen, but you know what I mean. Like, you got a guy coming back from injury, but I'm not like I haven't been following Teravainen's career as closely as I should. I'm probably underestimating his influence a little bit, but man, the Carolina Hurricanes, and they've got so many guys who are just hungry for a cup. Brett Burns, it's just fantastic hockey team. And I think with their goaltending, they're going to get the job done, really. So I've got Carolina in 7. And then in the West, I've got Vegas in 6. But I could see this going the other way as well. I think, I don't know. I think big part of it's goaltending, really. It's crazy to say, but I've got more faith in Aiden Hill right now than I do Ottinger. I know that sounds crazy, but that's kind of how I feel right now. So yeah, I'm going Vegas and Carolina in the Cup Finals. That would be a wild Cup Finals. But to be honest, I'm overall pretty happy with how these playoffs have transpired. Carolina, their last Cup, 2006. Dallas, their last Cup, 1999. And then there's like a 50% chance, if you give each team the same probability of winning the Cup, I guess, there's a 50% chance that we see a team win their first Stanley Cup in history, which I love seeing, really. Even if it's Vegas, I know it kills me as a Sharks fan. And you know what? Maybe it's a bit of that Sharks bias of why I'm kind of cheering for the East a bit more this year. Though I do really like the Panthers and I do really like the Hurricanes. But I can't root for Vegas. And I don't know. I'm not really drinking the Dallas Kool-Aid too much. It's just kind of like, okay, whatever. They went to the finals 2020, whatever, right? I don't know. I'm a bigger fan of the teams in the East this time around. So whether it's Florida or it's Carolina, I'm going to be rooting for whatever team comes out of there. But hey, let me know. Who do you think's going to win in the East? Who do you think's going to win in the West? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear. Really, honestly, these playoffs could go any way at this point. Really, these conference finals, any of these 4 teams can win their respected series. So yeah, it should be good hockey. Eastern Conference Finals starts Thursday night. Western Conference Finals start Friday night. I am hyped. I'm going to watch as much of that as I can. And yeah, it should be good. And that's it for episode 32 of the Hockey Variety Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Once again, really appreciate the support on the last episode there. That was my most viewed podcast episode so far. Maybe up till this one. We'll see. I don't know. Maybe we'll hit that 50 view mark on YouTube. For a video, that'd be cool. But yeah, if you enjoyed the podcast, be sure to subscribe on YouTube. Hockey Variety Podcast on Facebook, Hockey Variety Podcast on Instagram. Always very active on Instagram. So if you're looking for a good follow in the hockey world, I would recommend checking out our Instagram page. It's Hockey Variety Podcast on Instagram, all one word. And I'll talk to you guys when I talk to you guys next. I don't know when that will be. Life has been crazy. Just crazy busy, crazy good, but crazy busy, right? So, I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and thanks for listening.